Hello everybody, my name is Michael Laubscher and I've recently returned from a 5-night privately guided safari at Tswalu, Kalahari Game Reserve, and this is what we got to experience. Now, throughout the duration of our stay at Tswalu, we stayed at the Motse camp, and it is a beautiful camp. Incredible architecture, incredible finishes to the lodge, incredible staff, incredible food. Everything about this, the location, the look, the feel, everything about that lodge is absolutely breathtaking and well worth a stay there for a night or two. And then just the Kalahari in general is just such a unique and such a special place. It's unlike any other safari destination in Africa, I would say, seeing that it's kind of like a semi-arid kind of savanna. It's not really a desert, but it feels like a desert, kind of looks like a desert, but it's an arid savanna, and really a unique place to spend a couple of days in, because you'll find unique landscapes, you'll find unique climate or weather conditions, unique animal species. And speaking of animal species and weather, during your time there, and Tswalu is known for the rarest species, your more nocturnal species like your pangolin, your aardvark, your aardwolf, and they usually prefer the coldest periods of the day. And Tswalu, getting as cold as it can get there, these animals get active a lot sooner in the afternoons and go into their burrows late or mid-mornings when it gets way too cold in the middle of the night. So their behaviors change somewhat. So sadly, while we were there, we didn't really get to spend much time with nocturnals because it was strange. 2 or 3 days before we arrived, it was freezing cold, the normal average conditions for Tswalu in the middle of winter. But when we had arrived, it was a lot warmer than it usually is in that area. I mean, like, this jacket and a beanie was enough to keep me warm. Whereas if your normal conditions there, you'd be wrapped up and bundled and you'll have every kind of layer imaginable on you, barely able to move because it's so freezing while you're driving around. So this put a dampener on the nocturnals for us. We did see a tail of a pangolin while we were kind of walking through the bush looking for pangolin. But sadly, no aardvark. We were very lucky to get an aardwolf. That's the first time I ever got to see an aardwolf. Got a blurry picture of its ears behind grass, so nothing really too photographic. He stood still for about 10 seconds and then bolted off. But in saying that, Tswalu is still an incredibly beautiful destination. So even though sightings are far and few between, it's just phenomenal driving around there and seeing the landscapes as you're rolling and driving over the dunes further to the west, enjoying the landscapes around there while you're driving through, and the plains game that you'll kind of come across, like your oryx or your sable, your giraffe. There's a whole array of plains game that you can find in Tswalu, mountain zebra, some really cool things to experience, photograph, and in these phenomenal landscapes with, in certain areas, incredible backdrops, make for really great photographic opportunities wherever you find yourself within the reserve. And so, like I'd mentioned, we had a challenge. We obviously targeted Tswalu and went there to target the nocturnals such as pangolin, aardvark, things like this. But sadly, we cannot control the weather, and so we needed to improvise on the ground and make a change to try and maximize on everything else that Tswalu had to offer. So the very first morning, our game plans were early mornings, we target predators, and then in the afternoons and the evenings, we target the nocturnals because that's when they start moving and getting active. So speaking of predators, we had phenomenal time with the predators that Tswalu have on their property. And the first set of animals that we spent time with, or predators if I may, on our first full day on that morning were a pack of wild dog. So we needed to race out for quite some time. It was about a 2-hour drive. This is how vast and how massive this area is. a 2-hour drive at about 40 kilometers an hour. And we eventually then came across the pack of dogs after some incredible tracking that was done by our guide and our tracker and another vehicle from one of the other camps at Tswalu. And it was a great morning with them. We did find them quite late, so they had already eaten something. The puppies were still a little bit active. But other than that, we didn't get them too active. They'd literally just finished up a kudu. So I don't think anyone would want to move much after eating a couple of kilograms worth of steak. But still, nonetheless, very special to spend time with them. And the great thing about Tswalu is that it is so big, so exclusive. And when I say other camps in Tswalu, they've only got the size of Tswalu slips my mind now, but it is ginormous. I think it is, the one section is about 110,000 hectares. The other section is 20,000 hectares. So it is ridiculously large. And on this, there's 2 fully commercial camps running, and then there are a few other options like private villas that you can rent out or private homes that you can rent out. So it is very, very exclusive. Not a lot of people, and on a property that large, you barely see another vehicle. It's extremely rare that you'll come across another vehicle. So a really cool experience. You never get chased out of sightings or pressured for sightings, which is amazing. And this next sighting, for example, the lions that we got to spend time with the first morning, or the next morning when we went out, we went targeting lions, and we had a phenomenal time with a very large, we can call it a pride of cub, really. We came across a female. We came across some of the cubs off to the distance towards those hills, and they were kind of milling around playing, and eventually we started hearing the calls of a lioness coming from the west or the east behind us. And so we turned vehicle, the cubs all got up, started running. It was major interaction between these 9 cubs, if I recall correctly, and this one lioness. But then we followed them along this game trail that would lead us towards this body of water. But en route there, they were tackling mom, jumping on mom, climbing up into a tree, playing around, and just having an absolute blast. And a couple of days later, we came across that same pride, but now with 2 of these large, massive Kalahari black-maned lion, and they had killed a baby eland. Baby eland. But obviously, Dad was not keen and willing to share his meal with with the family. Well, call it his meal. I think the lioness has probably hunted and killed this little antelope, and he decided, well, this is now mine, and I'm taking over. But yeah, incredible lion sightings. We really enjoy time with them, and seeing lions in these environments and photographing them in these very arid areas, in trees, beautiful backdrops, was just really special. And both of those sightings, or actually that first video clip you saw with all the cubs walking towards us, we got to enjoy that all to ourselves. There was not another vehicle around. We had our morning coffee out there. We drove about 800 meters away from them, stopped the vehicle, had our coffee. We could still see them there playing, moving around as they were kind of resting up in the sun as it was warming up. And then got back in the car, went to view them again, and made our way back into camp later that morning. So really great time with lion. Staying with our cat family. Sadly, we didn't get to see any leopard on this trip, but we were tracking 3 individuals actually who were all walking together. There were 2 females and 1 male. So something was happening there, but the tracking and finding these animals in these vast, massive open areas is quite challenging, to say the least. It's even though the tracks are easily found and followed because of the terrain and the type of sand and soil, it's just so vast and so big that just trying to keep up with these animals, that's where the challenge lies. But one of its close spotted relatives, being the cheetah, is something we also spend a lot of good time with. So Tswalu has a female on the property at the moment, and she's got 3 cubs. We spent incredible time with her on the dunes. She was up on the dune up on one of the dunes one of the afternoons, scanning, looking for something to hunt. She then kind of missioned off, went down and tried to hunt something, and sadly missed. It was a little steenbok. And then she made her way back as the sun was setting, and we were photographing them as they were walking through the sunset. Moments before that, we had cubs jumping in a tree, playing in a tree, and it was just such a lively and interactive moment. Every time we spent time with these cats, it was always very lively because of the 3 little cats, the 3 kittens. So that was a lot of fun. And then it was about a day or 2 later, we came across the same female in the very same area, and she managed to kill and hunt a springbok, which is a very common antelope species you'll find in that region of South Africa, and it's South Africa's national animal. And sadly, there's now one less in the world due to this cheetah. But we got to enjoy cool time watching these cubs, what looked like very playful moments. But this playfulness, you'll see how where these cubs kind of grab the springbok and how they kind of lay down on it, put their paws on the animal's face. It's all a big learning curve for the day where they then now need to start hunting. All this playfulness that we see these cubs practicing, they will put to practice, or putting this to practice now will help them in the future when it comes to their hunting. So very cool moments spent with cheetah on that reserve. And then a few other predators that we got to spend some time with. We had a really cool moment with a spotted hyena that was kind of just following us and walking with us for a long period. And we knew exactly this was right at the end of the stay. I think it was our last evening, or second to last. But he was leading us to an area that we knew why he was walking that way, because there was a massive giraffe carcass. This bull succumbed to injuries that he got given by another male giraffe on the property. They were fighting. He hurt his neck, and his body just took too much of a beating, and he lay down at a certain spot close to the road for his final rest, sadly. But this carcass obviously pulled in a lot of predator activity. They in the past had leopards feeding on this carcass. Cheetah moved by, didn't feed on it, but lots of brown hyena, lots of spotted hyena, lots of jackal that came in and fed. So we had a lot of really cool activity on and around this carcass. Sadly for the giraffe, but yeah, it was a big up for us having to get to enjoy those kind of interactions where jackal were fighting, hyena chasing jackal away. It was really a cool moment to be a part of. And then the last bit of hype in terms of the wildlife that we got to experience in Tswalu is the time we got to spend with the meerkat. And meerkat are such cool little critters, and it's a great activity in a sense that we can get out the vehicle, stop at a point, and walk in towards one of the burrow systems. And these are habituated meerkats. So over the years, Tswalu's done intensive research on various different animals within the reserve, meerkat being one of them. And over the years, what has now happened is these animals have just become so used to the presence of people that they happily wake up in the morning. So you walk in, you go sit down next to the burrows, and you can chat normally. You can speak. You don't really have to be too quiet, or you don't have to limit your movements. But when they do start popping their heads out, once the sun warms up enough for them to now kind of pop out, then you can start moving around slowly, working different angles. But how this works is you, as I'd mentioned, walk in, sit down, find a place to relax, thinking that they might pop their heads out somewhere here. And once you do see one or two pop their heads up, and these are usually your sentries, they're kind of coming up, checking, scouting the area, making sure it's safe. And once it is, they start communicating a little bit. Then you see heads popping up everywhere. And then they just basically stand there in the early morning and bask in the sun. They stand up nice and straight, let the sun hit them on the chest. And once they feel warm enough and feel confident and safe enough to move on to go start foraging for the day, they then scurry off and go look for some food. And sometimes they get quite inquisitive and they come walking straight up to you, look into your camera lens, kind of sniff around you, dig a bit here, dig a bit there, and then they kind of just scoot and run past you and make their way off for the day. And speaking of moving off, foraging and looking for food, as I'd mentioned right in the beginning of this video, the food at Tswalu was phenomenal. And the great thing with Tswalu is with every booking, you get guaranteed a private vehicle and a private guide in a sense, and therefore the flexibility of meal times, when you want to eat, what you want to eat, how you want to eat it, whatever it may be, you as the guest can have your say. And this is something that Tswalu went, because we were there for quite a long period. Tswalu decided to spoil us one morning, and they took us out we were out on safari that morning, because you wake up, you get to the coffee station in the morning at the lodge at about just before 7, and you can have your coffee, tea, there's a bit of granola and yogurt and croissants and things to snack on. So not a full breakfast, but something to eat. You then head out at about 7:30 or so, because then it's warm enough for animals to start moving. And then you get back into camp at about 11, 12 o'clock. So around lunchtime, or just as breakfast is ending. And there you then have your big breakfast or lunch, depending on the time. Afternoon, you meet for your high tea, where you'll have more snacks and drinks at about 3 o'clock. And at 3:30, you make your way out on safari and come back in later that evening after dark for dinner. So, as mentioned, we were out on safari. We've only had a little croissant and a cup of coffee, and we were making our way far west. We were driving for what felt like forever, just going over the dunes, dune after dune, photographing, seeing things, tracking things. And we then eventually started approaching this one tiny little kind of water hole in the middle of nowhere. Kind of had an Etosha look and feel to it. And under one of the shepherd's trees there, a chef from the lodge and the lady that you see in the video as well is the kind of eating out, picnic events type coordinator at Tswalu. So she arranged that we go and have a breakfast out at this water hole, and we had oryx and wildebeest. There was something else milling around out there, I can't recall what, but very cool to be in the middle of what looked like a desert, sitting having a full-on continental and warm breakfast in the middle of Tswalu. That was really special. And speaking of special culinary experiences, during our stay there, we also went and enjoyed our time, or a dinner, or an experience, as they refer to it as, at Klein Jan restaurant. And from the moment you arrive, the build-up to it is even amazing. You've got a time slot that you need to arrive by, and then you sit up at the farmhouse, have your welcome drink, which is a water infused with roots of Kalahari, what was it? Lavender berry that you find in the Kalahari on the dunes. Didn't taste that great, but it cleared the dust out of the throat. But really everything about this was Kalahari, or had a touch or a feel of the Kalahari and the area that you're in. So that drink was really cool, and they give you a whole story as to how this drink and that the roots of this tree or this little bush and plant increases your appetite. So you sit and they speak to you about this. Thereafter, they offer you a drink, which was I ordered the Rooibos orange infused whiskey, like unique, really unique things. The guests had a glass of champagne. They bring your entree and starters to the table there. They chat to you. They speak about things, all while on the veranda of this very old farmhouse. You then start moving through into the main area of the show, and as you walk through the farmhouse out the back door towards the windmill, you go into this big old water reservoir. And as you walk into this, there's big spiral stairs going all the way down. And as you walk down these stairs, you're about 4 meters below ground level now, which then leads you into their pantry and their wine cellar. And within the pantry, they speak about everything, the fresh produce, where it comes from. It's all locally sourced. And your next meal that you have during this experience is standing in this pantry where they have a ingredient of the month. And while we were there, it was a date. So you had 6 different mini dishes that was all had dates in it, which was absolutely amazing. We had a date tea, we had a bacon mousse full date, we had all kinds of crazy fancy things that I will probably never be able to pronounce the names of, but these really cool ways that the chef has now incorporated a date into so many different kinds of meals and entrees as you walk in. Now, as you walk through the main area, or through that pantry and wine cellar, You then enter into the soup room, where you'll see his grand's big old massive stove, one of the first, or the first stove he cooked on, which was really cool. They give you the whole spiel, you have your soup in there, and then you make your way into the main restaurant, where you sit down, beautifully set up, beautifully finished, very neat, very clean, and it is a phenomenal experience. It was a 8-course experience, and it's something that if you ever do get to go to Tswalu and you're planning on doing so, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you go and enjoy a culinary experience at Kleinjan. It is so worth it. And that was basically our experience at Tswalu. It was a short and sweet stay for the 2 guests that I had hosted, Jen and Brian. Thank you again for joining and sharing the experience with me. It was a lot of fun, many good laughs. But Tswalu is a place where you do not really want to spend your 2 weeks on safari, unless you really only focusing on nocturnals. But if you're just your avid safari goer and you really want to enjoy this destination, I would say a 4-night minimum stay would be great, and you will see pretty much everything that Tswalu has to offer. And like I'd mentioned, well worth a visit and really beautiful. Driving around there looking for animals, and all while eating well, drinking well, sleeping well, and getting some really cool photographs. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, your eyes, your ears. And if you have any questions about Tswalu or any other travel or safari queries or questions, please feel free to get in touch. I'll happily assist, and I look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Until then, bye for now.